Joining us now to talk about this incident is Emilio Viano, professor in the Department of Justice, Law, and Society at American University here in Washington. Thanks for joining us. You know, we learned just within the few minutes that the FBI is taking the lead in this investigation. A task force has been formed. The White House is stopping short of saying it was a terror act, and Obama would not say that it was an act of terror. How would you classify these explosions?
Well, I think that they all indicate a terrorist act. There is really no other explanation. I suppose that the White House tries to be prudent in using language that might worry people excessively, that might even have an impact on the stock market, on the value of the dollar, on all sorts of other repercussions on the economy and on the life of the country. And certainly it is also not to give the terrorists an immediate victory in kind of admitting that they have been able to strike at such an important event in Boston. So I think it is just prudence waiting for the final verdict, but all the appearances are that this is a terrorist act, no doubt about it.
Not to take anything away from this tragic event, we have an 8-year-old child that died in this, but why does a story like this get so much attention considering the number of deaths on a daily basis that you hear about in other parts of the world, in the Middle East, in Africa, other regions?
Well, certainly, there is no question that, at least in the US, obviously, this is a major concern because anything that is connected possibly to terrorism and maybe having links outside the US with Al-Qaeda or maybe other organizations that are sworn enemies of the United States attracts a lot of attention. You are right. If you think about what Spain went through with several bombings by the ETA, or in Ireland, when there was the conflict between Northern Ireland and those who wanted the Republic of Ireland to be dominant, or in Germany or in Italy. In Europe, there have been many repeated examples of this, particularly in Spain. And people were able, up to a point, to cope with it. In the US, there is this feeling of invulnerability because of the two oceans that are surrounding the country, and also the major apparatus that we have of law enforcement and of FBI and of the military. So anything like this is a major event also because it looks like a major defeat in the efforts to counteract possible terrorist attacks.
Maybe a vulnerability? I mean, you know, despite who may have been behind this bombing, whether it's a domestic situation or international, do you think the event of today could spur some more anti-American sentiment abroad?
Well, I don't think so. I think that maybe there are those who might even cheer that this happened, and we can imagine that there may be some people like that. Most people, I'm sure, will be very sad at the loss of life and at the loss of limb. Also, there were 96 nations represented in the marathon, so certainly there is a lot of concerns in many parts of the world if some of their connationals have been involved, hurt, or even killed in this event. So I don't think it will spur anti-American feelings, but it will certainly, in a certain sense, prove that even the US is not totally terrorist proof, that there is a vulnerability, that there is a possibility that someone might succeed. And the fact that these seem to have been relatively crude bombs, not very large, indicates that maybe it is somebody who doesn't have that much sophistication, because it also appears that the material used were not particularly rare or valuable or sophisticated. In this respect, it is even more worrisome because it proves that if somebody knows how to make a bomb and plans it pretty well, it can inflict damage, even with all the law enforcement, intelligence, and efforts that are being taken in this country.
You know, we have a lot of other big events coming up around the world, and not to connect one with the other because we still really don't know what was behind this particular event or who is responsible, but you have Margaret Thatcher's funeral coming up this week. There's also another marathon in Paris upcoming. Do you think other countries are looking at this and maybe reworking some of their security plans?
I'm sure that they are certainly trying to be as careful as they can, and that they are revising their plans and trying to to check everything possible that they can. But in the end, we cannot live in a totally risk-free society. And this is an illusion that in parts exists in this country, in the US, that you can create a risk-free society. You can't. There is always a risk, and there is always a possibility that someone is able to inflict damage. We have been very lucky to date with the shoe bomber being found, with the underwear bomber being found, and with other bombs also being found, like the Times Square one a couple of years ago. But still, from time to time, someone will succeed. And in a sense, that reminds us of our own vulnerability, but also the fact that in a free society, we cannot institute such draconian measures that will make it impossible for anyone to even think doing something like that, which is actually impossible.
Emilio Viano, thank you again. We appreciate you coming on the air with us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.